no lizards, no aliens, no nonsense. This is Reality Bytes in association with Sovereign Independent UK and One World Chronicle. Wake up!
Welcome to Reality Bytes Radio on Awake Radio UK. Not the first broadcast of 2014 because I did a little bit on the 1st of January, which was quite interesting because I think we were cut off about 4 times in 15 minutes. Maybe I shouldn't have called Mrs. Elizabeth Windsor Saxe Coburg Gotha a bitch, but there you go. That's just the way it goes. And the Pope, I called him a nasty name as well, I think. But there you go. Anyway, not to worry. Happy New Year to you all. May it be a good one. And maybe start seeing a turnaround in what's going on in this country and across the world, really. Tonight we'll be talking to Dave Eden of the Community Press Group. As I was saying off air to our host, Paula, our producer, we've been out trying to film for the last couple of days and get a bit of practice on the streets of Potter's Bar, the metropolis of Potter's Bar, where there doesn't seem to be any people. I don't know what's going on there, but perhaps they've got no money left after Christmas. But yeah, it's not as easy as it looks, and a lot of hilarity has gone down the road. But never mind, we'll get there. Dave, you there?
I am indeed.
Coming through loud and clear. That's good. Okay, we're going to talk about serious subjects tonight, so we'll put the hilarity aside and get on with it, really. But prior to Christmas, I think it was the 17th of December, there was a report came out on Sky News. I think that's the only place I actually saw it, but there was child safety, 181 workers sacked by councils. More than 3,600 local authority workers were investigated in 2012-2013 over allegations relating to children, Sky News reveals. And basically, this story is saying that 181 workers were sacked, presumably, well, allegedly, because they were considered to be a danger to children in the course of their work. Now, it doesn't say what context that danger was in, and it doesn't say exactly what they were sacked for. It just says they were sacked. But there's a lot more to this story which really needs looking into. What was your take on this right off the bat, Dave?
I think the thing that concerned me most of all was the fact that it came across that 181 were sacked. Again, you're quite right. They were being judged to be a risk to children. Of course, I mean, this information unfortunately had to be obtained through the usual routes of Freedom of the Information Act requests. The fact that it doesn't state what they were sacked for, this is great generalisation, is a little bit of a concern. And secondly, what's information that hasn't been given, and it's something that we're now going to have to do, is further information, Freedom of Information Act requests to find out whether any of these people actually face criminal charges.
Yeah, the other side of that argument is that these people who were sacked, of these 181, did any of them actually take action for unlawful unfair dismissal? Because if they didn't, then they obviously felt they should have been sacked. And if they should have been sacked, then they've done something wrong. And as you rightly say, were any of these cases ever investigated for criminal offences?
Well, this is a problem, isn't it? I mean, it's we get this information out there. It's Sky News, I presume who it is, because they're the only people that report it, have gone to the trouble of trying to obtain this information, and they've done half a job. And at the end of the day, it's going to be down to us, or it's going to be down to somebody else. I should imagine it's going to be down to us to try and get to the bottom of this in every way, shape, and form that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just that question. It's they investigated a lot more than that. And what did they investigate the other people for, and why weren't they sacked? I mean, they obviously had some kind of suspicion against the others. It was. I can't actually see the number here, but it was a lot more than 181 people that were investigated.
The numbers shown was 695.
Well, 695 people investigated and 181 sacked. I mean, what we're talking about, a quarter of them, roughly. So 695 people with cases to answer or not, at least some kind of suspicion that those people have were considered a danger to some degree to children, and it'd be interesting to see what those suspicions were on, by category, if you like, and relative seriousness or whatever, and at what level of serious risk they actually decided to sack people and what they didn't sack people for. Well,
precisely, and I think this is what we're going to have to do, and this is what we should be making an effort to do, and to be putting it up there on the site. I spoke to the website developer about this, and we actually need a separate area on there detailing all the Freedom of Information requests that we've got in, and actually the responses that we're getting. I mean, it's quite interesting in the report itself. There's a lady by the name of Laura Eden, no relative, who was or who is a designated officer of one of the councils. She doesn't want that council to be named, because I'm quite certain that's quite easy to find out. And she said that that she's finding it very very useful, and it's very good that people are referring professionals that they are concerned about. Now, she doesn't say whether that's colleagues or whether that's members of the public. And she actually admits here that there used to be a time when a professional working in an organisation, such as the local authorities, that felt something wasn't right, or a child made an allegation against them, that there was no procedure to deal with that. And that she's stressing that it's really important that these procedures are now in place, and that they're being followed. Although, again, we've got no great evidence of what they are and how they're being followed, and what the allegations are. It's a very generalised statement.
Right. The figure you gave of 695 is actually the amount of cases which were actually investigated by the police. But the council actually looked into 3,651 local authority workers. So, I mean, there's 3,651 suspected cases at the start of this, and the police actually looked into 695 of them.
Well, if it was considered important enough to involve the police, then there must have been more than reasonable suspicion that offences had been committed. And so, we're taking 181 that were sacked from that. There's a huge difference there, a distance of nearly 500 people that weren't sacked, that were referred to the police. And we can imagine that out of that 181, it'd be interesting to find how many criminal charges were brought against them, because overall that's going to show a very low percentage of any criminal charges being brought, if any at all.
Yeah, out of the original 3,651.
Absolutely. You're probably talking less than 1%.
Yeah. As I say, it'll be interesting to find out at what level they decided to proceed with an investigation on individuals, and what line in the sand they drew and said, well, there's not enough evidence to do anything about the other 514 cases.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, without boring people senseless, we know what the charging standards are.
Yeah.
And I find it difficult to believe that if nearly 700 people were referred, that well, we don't know the figure, but as a result of which only 181 got sacked. So it shows that 500 didn't. So one can presume that those police investigations didn't go anywhere. And I don't really think that's going to be representative of what truly was going on. And I think that's what we need to find out. We need more precise details. And I think this is, one of the main problems of the mainstream media. That they will give you a little bit of a taste of something. They will tell something. They will identify that potentially there's an issue there, but they'll leave it at that. And I think we need to know, and I think the public need to know exactly what's what, and that's what we'll strive to achieve.
Yeah, well, of course, these 514 have gone presumably back into the jobs they were in before, and they still have access to children. So are people keeping an eye on these people, or what?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, you use the word presumably there, and I mean supposition. It's a great thing, but maybe that's something else that we need to look at as well and find out. I mean, we can structure a Freedom of Information Act request around 4 specific areas that are going to cover all those points. And I think that's what we need to be doing, and we need to be encouraging the community press journalists that we've got on board to be doing it in their area as well. Spread the workload a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these 514 might have actually left of their own accord, and they don't show up in these figures. It's kind of put to them that they'd be better off leaving, but we don't know. But it'd be interesting to find out. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the cases that we've got on the books, as it were, but obviously can't go into too much detail. And I mean, we've come across a kind of phenomenon, if you like, of men. I'll say men. I don't think they are men really. They're a bit lower than that. But who, we hear all these cases of the women getting the children taken and the trauma they go through and all the rest of it. But later on we'll come on to actually there are men out there actually preying on these women and, getting into their confidence and basically, causing them further stress and anxiety and further problems in their lives. But we'll go to a piece of music first, and we'll come back and talk about the general things that are going on within the social services. From we've been up to the north of Scotland, to the south of England, and we're seeing a pattern kind of developing. And we'll go into that after the first piece of music, which I think Paula's got lined up, and it's by Imagine Dragons, believe it or not, and Radioactive. I know a lot of people that do Imagine Dragons, and they're off their heads. But there you go.
No lizards, no aliens, no nonsense. This is Reality Bytes in association with Sovereign Independent UK and One World Chronicle.
Welcome back to Reality Bytes Radio on the 9th of January 2014. We're talking to Dave Eden from Community Press Group. Myself and Dave work together well, actually very closely, because it is a very, very small office. But we're obviously, virtually back to back at some stage, but we won't go into that. The coffee machine's the only thing that gets between us, put it that way. We talked off air about some of the cases that we're involved in, and we're not going to mention any names or locations or anything like that, because there will be criminal prosecutions being followed up in the near future in some of these cases. So, Dave, if you want to just give a brief outline of some of the stuff that we've come across and where it's likely to go.
Yeah. Before we do that, Neil, I'd just like to say, I did all that service and all my time in the police service. Certainly for the last sort of 10 years or so of my career, I just sort of principally investigated fatal road accidents. And I've seen some terrible things, and I've actually been able to go home and sleep at nights. The last few months, seeing and dealing with some of the things that I've dealt with, I've laid awake till the early hours of the morning with this churning round in my mind. Some of the things have shocked me. They've appalled me. I mean, on a couple of occasions, I'll freely admit I've sat there and the odd tears come out as I'm talking to some of these ladies. It's horrific. There's always a great danger with this, and I live in fear of this, because they're closed courts. They put court orders on everything. You can't say this, you can't say that, you can't release information of this, that, and the other. Always using the safety and privacy of the child as being the excuse, and it makes it very difficult to talk about. And I think that's a very, very, very deliberate ploy. So anything that I'm going to say now has got to be very generalised. Although I would give my right arm for the opportunity to be able to speak freely about everything that I've heard over these last few months.
Well, having said that, I mean, as you and I are aware, I mean, these cases are going forward, and there will be criminal cases taken, and hopefully, when the right result comes around, then you can talk freely about it.
Yeah, we'll certainly be able to talk freely about the convictions, but of course the convictions again, or the proposed convictions are an issue, because you can't really go in and start to instigate criminal proceedings in an ongoing matter, because the way that the system is working, it's going to greatly prejudice the mother, the child. And I think that's very much by design. It's extremely frustrating, and so you have to work through the process. I mean, obviously, the objective is to see a child returned back to where it should be with its parents, or 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, just with its mother. And it's once you've got to that stage and you've got beyond that stage, that's the time that you can say, okay, then this is what happened in this case. These are the breaches of the law. These are breaches of court orders. These is where Section 2 or Section 4 harassment offences have been committed. And this is now where we're going to instigate action. I mean, for me, the important thing is that we let these people know, and we let them know as soon as we can. Unfortunately, Mumby Lord Justice has actually said, I think that was in 24th of October of last year, that social workers and people from the local authorities should face the same penalties and risks of prosecution as do the parents and the mothers of these children. What I'm finding is that social workers are habitually breaching court orders. They just ignore them as if they don't exist, but the minute the parent fails to comply with something, they're on them. They're pushing for excuse me, they're pushing for criminal action to be taken against the parent, but they seem to think that as a local authority they are immune from the rulings of the court. And my objective here is that we do have a number of cases that we have definitive and empirical evidence that these people have committed offences. And we will pursue them, and we will pursue them through the courts. Not only will I to do it. I'm involved in actively training other people how to take statements, how to gather evidence, what the rules are of getting something into court. We're very lucky that we now have some other professionals coming on board from the legal system that are saying, should these matters get to Crown Court, they're prepared to work pro bono, and we will start to see a difference, because these people need to understand that they cannot hide behind the authority. They cannot hide behind their position, the organisation, that they are individuals and they will be individually accountable. And it's by bringing this accountability in that people are going to realise, well, hang on a minute, this is going to come down, and these actions are going to rest squarely on my shoulders as an individual. And as soon as we start to get some convictions, I think that we'll see the entire organisation of the social services throughout the UK hopefully become a little bit more professional, and quite rightfully feel considerably more vulnerable.
Yeah, I think after Lord Justice Mumby's decision or statement, that the heads of the social departments would have kind of dragged their social workers in and said, look, you better tone it down a bit, or start playing by the rules a bit more. But I would imagine this has been going on for such a long time, and some of these people, it's so endemic with them that they'll carry on regardless, thinking that well, you always protected us before, so we'll just carry on, and I'm sure they're going to commit more offences. And
they are doing, yeah.
And
I mean, let's get some perspective on this. There are some very good social workers out there, but there are an awful lot of very bad social workers out there. They're like all of everything, whether it's the police, whether it's National Health Service, whether it's local authorities. They are target driven. And they're overworked, and I'm not making excuses, because there aren't excuses. Professionalism, especially in this particular area, when you're dealing so closely with people's lives and the lives of children, is paramount. The duty of care has to be the first consideration. And likewise for myself and for you and for anyone else that's working with us, we must take that duty of care as to be our priority as well. And therefore, we mustn't rush into anything that is potentially going to jeopardise, or it's going to instigate some form of vindictiveness by the people that have the power to do so. Having said that, I would like to talk more specifically about cases, and I will give you some sort of broad ideas of the things that we're coming up with. I mean, the hypocrisy of these people is just staggering. Do excuse me. The content, or the lack of continuity of service provision across the UK is literally jaw-dropping. And there are genuine cases. There are cases where children should be taken. I personally know of a case where there are two children under the age of 4 that are resident with a female. She is an habitual drugs user. She's never got any food in the house. You go in there, the children are crawling around in filthy conditions. There's never any food for them to eat. There's bottles of milk or formula, as our American friends would call it, sitting on the windowsills that have gone mouldy. She's very often deeply under the influence of drugs. There is a male who is the father of the children, who is also the father of other children that he's not allowed to see. He's an habitual drugs user. He's in and out of prison. He's violent. He's dangerous towards the children. And the social services will not take these children into custody. They will not take them to a place that should be safe. And I know this. And, had I been working and I'd have gone into that venue as a police officer, I would have put a police protection order on, and I would have taken those children. But then we get to the other end of the spectrum, where we've got social workers pushing their way into people's houses because an 8 or 10 or 12-year-old child has actually said to teachers at school, "Oh, I was playing Call of Duty," which apparently is I really don't know a lot about the game, but it's an 18-rated game, and they've come around to their houses and said, well, and seized their video games. And use this as evidence against them as bad parenting and as a tool, as an instrument to get the child removed from them. There is just no continuity of service.
I mean, what next? I mean, if the child is sitting in front of the television watching the news, I mean, is the news for over 15s, 18-year-olds? What is it? They're showing you bloodshed and violence on the news every day of the week. So if you allow your children to watch what's supposedly, the news, you're supposed to watch it and take it all in, then that must be a bad parent as well.
Well, who's to say? I mean, they seem to make the rules up as they go along. I mean, I've seen evidence presented to say, well, this child was out playing unsupervised, a child of 12 years old. Well, I went to the venue and looked at it, and the actual where the house is situated, it's in a very small cul-de-sac of no more than about 10 or 12 houses. The child and children in his peer group were also playing out in the street. They could be quite easily seen, but of course none of this is put into the reports. This is put across, and it's put across in a negative way. We've got obviously far more serious cases than that. We have cases of, and this is where I'm a little bit concerned because I don't want anything to be identified, where we have an incidence of serious sexual assault on a child by a male parent, a professional, somebody that should be a highly respected professional. And the entire thing, whether it's deliberate or whether it's just sheer incompetence, they've dropped the ball from day one. No criminal charges have been brought, despite the fact that there seems to be considerable, significant, definitive evidence of the offence. Computers containing hardcore child pornography were allowed to be taken from the address, and the police stood there and watched him take it. Although they were informed, these computers, this laptop, this desktop, have got these images on. They've been independently looked at by a computer expert. Here's the evidence, and they, we haven't been told to seize them. And they allow him to take them out of the country. Yeah, it beggars belief.
Yeah, I just going back to what you were saying about the child playing Call of Duty, whatever that is. I don't know what it is either. I wrote an article today about the Guardian newspaper advertising the claim that an online hardcore pornography site, which is free apparently, sent them details of their data on UK people's browsing habits. And the Guardian published this, and it's just a big PR piece for the porn company, basically. And I wonder if Guardian parents, I mean, there's a bit of an oxymoron, but if Guardian reading parents, should I say, left that newspaper, I'll call it newspaper in inverted commas, lying about on the coffee table in the living room, and the child picked it up and saw the name of this porn site and went and looked at it, is that classed as bad parenting? Because I would suggest that is, to be honest with you. Because if you're leaving stuff like that lying about your house and your children are looking at it, they could be 12, 13-year-old, well capable of using the internet, and then there they are, they're watching hardcore pornography because the parents have allowed it to happen.
To be honest, Neil, I think whatever they want to class as bad parenting can be bad parenting. Yeah. Whether it's allowing your child to go out, it's allowing your child to watch television, it's allowing your child to associate with certain individuals within their peer group. There doesn't seem to be any hard and fast rules. I've seen the full gambit of everything. Quite jaw-dropping, absolutely, and I'm not exaggerating it. I sit here sometimes reading this stuff in complete bewilderment. I'm going to give you another quick example, and this is when I was a serving police officer. I went to a call one day where a young baby of several weeks old, was being held out at arm's length from a third-storey window, probably a good 50 feet in the air. The child was covered in gloss paint, and the person holding it was threatening to drop the child. Long story short, we gained entry to the premises, two-storey flat. There wasn't anything in that flat, nothing. No furniture, no carpeting. There was a double mattress and a duvet, and that was it. There was broken glass on the floor. There was used needles on the floor. As I said, the child was covered in gloss paint and was being held by the male, threatening to injure it if we came any closer. Again, we resolved the issue by a little bit of quick thinking and brute force, if the truth be told. And I took the child and I placed it under a PPO, police protection order, which is a 72-hour order. Within 48 hours, that child was returned to the mother into the same environment. And I was so shocked. I had a forensic photographer come to the flat, and I had them take photographs of everything. And then somebody's turning around to say to me, I've got social services on my back because I'm homeschooling. And, you know, I'd like to expand on that, but I can't without risk of exposing the case. But one of the things that I'm finding now is where parents choose to homeschool, the local authorities, they will get involved. There should be no reason for them to get involved, but they are getting involved. And they're accusing, quite wrongfully most of the time, the parents of all sorts of things. And one of the most frequent things that's coming up is the now disproved or not accepted Munchausen's by proxy syndrome, which I think they call FII now. And they say they're claiming parents are imagining fantasy illnesses for their children and using that as an excuse why they can't go into mainstream schooling. Even though some parents who are guardians of children that either do have a physical or learning disabilities, and these parents are getting referred to mental health assessments. On occasions residential, and I'm going to speak of one, and again I don't want to be too specific about this. All I will say is this lady is a very, very attractive young lady who was referred for an assessment, and this is going to lead us on to the next stage actually. And the mental health practitioner was suggested to her that what she needed was sex therapy, and he very bravely put himself forward. And when he was promptly rebuffed, and he was told that the complaint was going to be made against him, his answer to that was, well, that's not going to happen because I will just say that you came on to me, you offered me sex in return for me doing a good evaluation, and, at the end of the day, I'm not the one that's mad. And, how can you combat things like that? I mean, the system or parts of the system are just corrupt.
Well, I think in that case that person clearly is the mad one. But as you say, you don't want to go further into that for fear of identifying the guy. I mean, we have a common theme, which we've. A case that we had up in Scotland with a lady, very unfortunate circumstances, found her children taken off her, and. Fortunately for her, she was quite with it and started documenting the stuff from the start. And it'll be interesting to see how her case goes. But one of the excuses which is quite bizarre is, and we've come across it in more than one cases, where children are taken off of parents at a very, very early age, simply on the basis that parent was sexually abused as a child. I mean, that is completely bizarre. It's almost like some kind of thought crime has been put into practice, and they're saying, well, you may in the future abuse that child, so we're having it. That seems to be the thought processes behind that. Although, these children seem to be these kind of cases seem to become more frequent, and the, how shall I put it, the adoption industry seems to have sprung up out of nowhere. To the stage where we now have adoption exhibitions, you could call them. I think there was 9 in London in one day or 1 week prior to Christmas there at the start of December. And basically children are being put into catalogues for people to come along and pick as if you were going to Argos. I mean, that seems to be where it's going.
It is. I think that's something that we've inherited from the US. We've inherited an awful lot of good things from the US, but That and Starbucks is maybe some of the things that we didn't need to inherit from the US. Yes, we are seeing that. There is this, as you said, the thought police. By the same token, let's face it. If parents are criminals, or one of the parents are criminals, and for instance, the child's male, well, let's take them straight away then and incarcerate them because the father's a burglar, then the child's likely to be a burglar. It's complete nonsense, but we are seeing it, and as you rightfully said, we've seen it in more than one case. We've seen children as young as 7 hours old taken, and in fact, we were together when the call came in from the gentleman at the hospital when the police were there trying to PPO the child to stop them leaving the hospital with the child, which was a few hours old, while the social workers got a warrant, and at the time as they were removing him from the hospital, a chronic diabetic. We actually heard the guards. We actually heard the police officers or the guards with him throwing him off the premises, and him saying, "Well, look, I'm diabetic. I haven't had my insulin. I've not eaten. I need insulin now." Well, tough shit. You're not going to get it. Excuse my French there. And it seems that around this entire industry that there are enforcers, so to speak, and there's very, very little that you can do to stop it. But that's going to change, and these people are going to be held accountable.
Yeah, but what a question there before it scrolls off the screen. Kerry asking, I think I know the answer to this anyway, but why is it or how is it that only half the people convicted of child abuse get a jail sentence when they can jail a shoplifter? My thoughts on that would be that there's far less of a burden of proof on a shoplifter than there is in a child abuse case, and that's possibly why that is. Would I be right in that?
Probably not, no. With respect to Kerry there, generally for a shoplifter to be jailed, they're going to have to be recidivist, in so much as they more than likely got a multitude of offences behind them. In terms of a child abuser, I don't think there's any excuse ever for not giving a custodial sentence, ever. I can't see that any set of circumstances, you can't, any abuse on a defenceless child, it cannot really be looked at in terms of the severity of that abuse. Abuse is abuse, and if it's severe abuse, then we should be seeing these people going to prison, for 20, 30, 40 rest of their lives. And maybe the sentencing can be structured in a manner that's representative of the seriousness of the offence. But I think it sends a message out there to anybody that people get away with it if that's the way we look at it. They may get a conviction, they may get community service, and so on and so forth. I personally don't think that anybody should ever receive anything else other than a custodial sentence for a definitively proved conviction for child abuse.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and it takes us back to the original article we started discussing, where all these social workers were investigated, 695 cases, and only 181 sacked, and we at this stage we don't even know if any of these people have ended up being convicted of anything. But it begs the question: where's the line in the sand? At what level of abuse do you get jailed for? And as you say, abuse is abuse. No,
there should be no line in the sand. There should
Exactly.
be no line in the sand. And, and I do feel strongly about this. I know we're going off kilter a little bit here, but it's the same with domestic abuse. In 30 years policing, I saw a lot of domestic abuse. You could see the pattern. I went back to the same houses over and over and over and over again over the years. And the same thing, anybody that's going to take advantage, and let's be honest about this, is predominantly men. There are incidences of domestic abuse where the females are the protagonists, but not that frequently. But any man that is going to raise his hands and physically abuse a woman should be doing some time. There's no excuse for it. This leniency that we've got towards this, and this thing where we can reform people and so on and so forth, it doesn't happen. You ask anybody, any woman that has been the victim of domestic abuse, they will continue to be the victim of domestic abuse whilst ever they're in that relationship, and that is the same for somebody that's going to abuse a child.
Yeah, well, I came across a website. I discussed it with you today. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I think it was something along the lines of virtuous paedophiles. And they were basically saying that they deserve to have the same rights as any sexual group, because it was just a sexual orientation. There was no harm meant in it, and they justified it by saying that they might look at children in a sexual way, but they weren't actually doing anything, so it was all right. But they wanted to have the same rights as homosexuals, transsexuals, whatever. Somewhere down the line, that's obviously just a stepping stone to having full rights. And we see this at the same time as they're trying to lower the age of consent right across Europe to bring it down, as opposed to the lowest common denominator, which at the moment seems to be 12 or 13. And you're seeing the age of consent lowering, and the rise of the paedophile, if you like. And you've got to wonder if that's what the whole Jimmy Savile thing was about. Outing him and get it into the public domain, get people disgusted at it, and then gradually drip feed this notion that children are growing up a bit quicker now, so they're not really children at 15, 14, 13-year-old anymore. They're young adults, so they can make up their mind. We'll give them all the sex education, and we'll teach them to masturbate at 5-year-olds, so they're well prepared for it. That seems to be the way it's going. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Dave.
Well, it's something I don't want to think about, to be honest. And you're quite right in what you're saying. And in respect of the other issues, I mean, I posted an article recently about diversity and literally how it hasn't progressed, certainly throughout all my service in the police and to today. And let's face it, if we're accepted of, and we should be accepting of, people within society, with everyone's society, regardless of sexual orientation or ethnicity or religion and so on and so forth. But there has to be a boundary, as you said. There has to be a line in the sand, and that line in the sand has got to be when somebody is an adult. And regardless of how children are developing, physically they're developing earlier than seems to have done so historically. They're not developing mentally. And yeah, I can see what he's saying, because I can see that being the way that people are going to say, yeah, I'm a paedophile and that is a sexual orientation, and this is very much evident within the prisons. I've dealt with paedophiles over the years, and I know that they go to sessions on a daily basis in the prisons. And people that have worked in the industry have said to me, Dave, they are what they are. They are, as your white, male, fat, heterosexual, they are paedophiles, and that's what they will always be. And it's all of this that we're doing with them is basically, it's just behavioural modification. But I can see the argument there that as society is supposedly becoming more liberal, well then actually these are our rights. But you have to draw that line in the sand, and people have got to say, no, this is not going to happen. We are not lowering the age of consent. This is what it is. This is what it remains. And there will be some things, child abuse, paedophilia, in my mind, domestic violence, which are always going to be repulsive to society and should never, ever be accepted.
Yeah, I mean, we can we can go into the rights of the child and all the rest of it, but at the end of the day, the key word there is child. So when it comes to the age of consent and all the rest of it, then that child is still to be parented by its parents. And the parent has the right to say, no, you're not going to have sex with that old man at 14, 15 years old. You're just not. And it's straightforward as that. Because the child doesn't have as you say, the mental capacity to conduct themselves in that way with somebody who is basically preying on children. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Well, it does. And I've seen the arguments as well. I've read articles written by people that have, openly admitted that they've had sexual encounters with children as young as 10 and 12, and that the children have enjoyed it and that they found it satisfying and comforting, and it's introduced them and helped them sort of to develop a positive sort of outlook on themselves and to be positive people and all this sort of nonsense. That's exactly what it is, Neil. It's complete and utter nonsense.
Sorry, that just brought to mind. There was a case in the European Parliament where I think one of the Euro MPs actually admitted he'd had sexual relations with a child, and he was quite proud of it, and nothing was ever done about it. But we'll go to another piece of music, and we'll come back and we'll take this conversation on a bit further. The next song, quite appropriate, is The Offspring. It's not called Change the Nappies. It's called Change the World. Welcome back to Reality Bytes Radio. We were talking just before the break about them kind of normalising paedophilia, and I had a quick look for an article which I remembered, a European Parliament member admitting to paedophilia. Now I found one. I think it's a different guy this time. So there's more than one of them in there. But he actually wrote a book on it, and his name's Daniel Cohn-Bendit. Well, that's probably an appropriate name, I don't know. But he wrote a book describing his experiences at a nursery school as a nursery school teacher in the following terms. My flirtations with all children soon required a definitely erotic character. I could sense how young girls aged 5 had already learned how to get off with me. It happened several times that some children opened my codpiece and started caressing me. According to the circumstances of each case, I reacted differently, but the children's wishes posed problems for me. When they insisted I caressed them in return, I was accused of being a pervert, and there were letters to the city council asking whether I was paid for by public funds. Fortunately, I had concluded my contract directly with the parents' board, otherwise I would have been sacked. In Germany, the anti-authoritarian movement has had its strongest impact in the field of education. Wilhelm Reich and Marx were the pillars of this new movement. Freud was less important because he had done objective research on sexuality, whereas Reich represented the fight for sexuality, in particular, the right for sexuality of younger people. Now, here's a guy in the European Parliament actually admitting that he abused children, yet he's still in the European Parliament now, and not an arrest being made or not even questioned. And he was doing this back in 1975, apparently. So, that's the kind of characters we've got running the system. So, it's not surprising that people are getting away with it, really, especially those at the higher end of the spectrum, shall we say, who don't even get exposed, really. Or if they do get exposed, they tend to run away to lawyers and start suing people. But anyway, so we were talking off the break there. I mean, what's your view on that, Dave?
Yeah, well, what can I say? I can't add any more to it than what you said. It doesn't surprise me. We know this goes on. We know it goes on certainly within the higher echelons of society. And we know that it's going on now. We know from our own experience that it's going to go on now. And I'll quite openly say, and we are aware of something that's going on in one of the home counties. We do know that there are a number of people involved, and using the resources that we've got now, especially the number of retired and ex-serving police officers we've got on board, that we're looking at that. And let's be open and honest about this. We are going to look at it. We are going to deploy surveillance. We are going to get evidence, and we're coming. We are coming. And we will do what potentially the authorities won't do. And let's make no bones about it. It's the time to talk is gone. The time to take some action is here, and people want to do it. And there are a number of people out there that want to proactively get involved and are getting involved. So let's be open. Let's be upfront with it. Be careful, because you never know who's watching.
Yeah, exactly. And you said, before the break there that it's not just the children that are victims. Of course, it's the parents in many cases. Even if it's a member of their own family who's done the abuse, there's always one of the parents is left to deal with the carnage of it, if you like. And of course, that child is never going to be the same again. It doesn't matter how much therapy they get. It doesn't matter, counselling and all the rest of it. This sticks with them for life. I mean, I know that from my own personal experience. Not that I was abused, but I know somebody who's very close to me who was, and it still affects them to this day. And they're nearly 50 years old. So, and I suppose we seem to have a very bad connection here. I don't know if that's at your end, Dave.
No, I can hear you fine.
No, you're coming through awfully there. I think, Paula, are you there, Paula?
Yes, I am. You want us to go to a song real quick?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, we'll come back after. We'll try and get the sound sorted out. Sorry, folks. We're just apologies. That just reminds me of our filming today. That's how silly it was, and it just never happened. But anyway, we were talking off air about Dave's personal life, which we won't go into on air for obvious reasons, because that may be a court case. Who knows? Right, we were talking off air, getting back to the serious subject, about the effect on victims. And as I said before the break, there are victims all over the place when you start talking about child abuse, not just the child, and you're talking about the parents of that child. I mean, on many cases, the child's abused by somebody outside the family. So the whole family is affected. But yeah, I mean, Dave, you want to, obviously, again, without going into specifics, the effects that you've come across on some of these victims, both the parents and the actual victims of abuse themselves.
Yeah, I think basically on that one, Neil, I'm going to concentrate more on the parents. As previously stated, the dynamic tends to be single mothers or single parent mothers, and I think the most disturbing thing about it is we talk about our military quite rightfully and the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, we know that because you and I have a colleague very close to us that has suffered very badly from that.
And I'll just add he's actually on at 10 o'clock after this broadcast.
Oh, right, okay. And perhaps he didn't want the world to know that, but there we go.
Well, he's actually said that on air, so that's public knowledge.
Right. So we've seen the effects of it. I think it's very much overlooked the effects that it has on the people concerned, especially the parents of the child. This is, again, predominantly the mother. And there's no better way than describing it. A lot of these ladies, they are experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. And unfortunately, this is where a lot of we then get the CAFCAS people involved, who are the mental health teams. And it's not surprising that that these ladies are displaying some signs of mental health disorders. And it is purely and simply post-traumatic stress. They become so emotional, so distressed, so distraught. The general everyday functionality is something that sort of becomes an insignificance to them. I asked a lady a question that I was speaking to the other day. It wasn't a particularly complicated question. It was maybe a yes or no answer, and if it was yes, then a very short explanation as to why it was yes. After 2 or 3 minutes, I clicked the timer on my phone while she was talking, and it took a further 17 minutes, 6 seconds for her to answer the question. And during that time, just information just poured out and poured out and poured out and poured out as she unloaded and unloaded and unloaded. And this is completely typical. The clarity of thought gets destroyed. The emotions are so raw. And of course, this again is then held against them. So, well, this woman's mentally unbalanced. And but what they're not saying is, well, maybe this woman is suffering some form of post-traumatic stress. But what is the causational factor of that? And quite frankly, the majority of the time, the causational factor of that is their actions. It's what they have done. But there's no support for that. And what it does is it leaves them extremely vulnerable.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, you stopped a bit quick there. Yeah, of course. And I mean, I don't know. Do you want to carry on talking about the victims in that context, or are we going to move on to them actually being vulnerable and people actually seeking them out to abuse them still further?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot more to say on that, because if I continue to talk about it, it may seem as if I'm being almost critical or judgmental, and that is not the case at all. I find it deeply distressing, very, very, very concerning. What a lot of them do, and this again is a great scourge of the 21st century. They take to social media, to the point of where some of the things that they're putting on social media can lead them into trouble with the courts. They start getting trolls. And there are a great number of websites and blogs out there for people in this situation. And they're going on there and they're discussing their problems and, supposedly receiving support from, other victims. And I say victims because social services, the way that they are defined by the social services and the local authorities, they are clients, they are customers. But you will never find a single parent that will regard themselves as a customer. They all, without fail, identify themselves as a victim. What now? And we're going to be very blunt about this as well. What we have realised is that we are having a number of men out there that are trolling these sites and they are seeking these women out. And I think one of the first things that people need to be aware of, certainly these ladies need to be aware of, is when these knights in shining armour come riding in, what you will normally find is that, suddenly they can be wherever they are tomorrow. I mean, I've even known tracked guys that have left the UK and gone to the continent to be with these women. And I think one of the most important questions that people need to be asking, well, if you're going to help me, won't that affect your job? Because I can guarantee you most of them, in fact, all of them will not have a job. Now, to this end, and I no regrets about this, got no shame about this. We have a number of females, some of them ex-police officers, that have started to put profiles up that are going onto these sites and are collating the information, and sometimes in 2 or 3 different names, and they're being targeted by the identical men, usually with a contact me directly. This is my personal email. This is my personal cell phone number, and they're out there and they're predatory. Some of the women have been physically abused. Some have been sexually abused. A lot of them have been taken advantage of financially. I do know of one case where the chap exited quite rapidly, stage left, after he'd got a sum of not far off £50,000 offer. And this is something that we're seeing time and time and time and time again. And so the whole process is creating victims, but they're not only victims of the original circumstances, they are becoming victims of the consequence of those circumstances. And I would say to these guys that are out there, if you're listening, you're doing it, you're out there, just like some of these guys, some of these organisations go out there and they hunt for paedophiles. We're looking, we're watching, we're going to find out, and if we find you, we're going to expose you. If you're committing criminal offences, we're going to be seeking some form of action, and that will be by direct intervention straight to the police services, and we will gather the evidence. It's despicable, but it's happening. It's a reality, and it should never ever be ignored.
And of course, some of these men, again, I hesitate to call them men because they're not. They're just scumbags. They're actually detrimental to these women's court cases from day one.
Precisely. Sorry.
To the point where the courts have actually identified the problem and said, well, if this person's involved, then, forget it. Basically, you'll never see your child again.
Yeah, fundamentally, yes. And I mean, they're going in there, they're offering them the most ridiculous advocacy. And of course, suspicions are raised. These people are then being looked at by the local authorities. The information they're getting is not always openly disclosed, but they're basing their objections on that. And the other thing as well, what concerns me is why, there are some of them out there that are obviously preying on the ladies concerned. That they're obviously in it either for financial reasons or sexual reasons, or the fact that they need just a combination of both and somewhere to live. There's a darker aspect to that as well, and that is have these people got other children? Why are they there? What is their interest in these women that are alone? What is his interest in these women that are still retaining their children but fighting the system to make sure they retain them? Why are these people suddenly trying to integrate themselves into their life? Do they themselves represent a danger to that child? And very often the local authorities say they do, and they use that as an excuse to take the child, or a reason to take the child, or to retain the child. And what I would say to people, if you're in this situation, please, please, please do not take social media. It's the very, very worst thing you can do.
Well, again, I mean, there's a lot of women up there. I mean, just in general. I mean, there's a lot of men, women, families putting pictures of their children up there from day one. Here's little Johnny playing with his toy gun and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the way it's going. I mean, you put images up of a child holding a knife or something, you could be seen as an irresponsible parent or something, and before you know it, you get a knock on the door. So I mean, I've never understood why people put pictures of their children on social media at all. I mean, they're obviously going to attract certain types of people who will see those children as as something to be sought out. Never mind the parents; they're not interested in the single parent mother. They're looking at the pictures of the children. So, I mean, again, you have to say to people, if you're using social media, be very, very careful and do not put your pictures of your children up there. I mean, that's I've always felt that about Facebook and these kind of things. I'm not on Facebook, so, and I've told my son never to put his children up there, and thankfully he doesn't anymore. But,
well, we know from personal experience, don't the people that we associate with, the people that have got expert skills, that regardless of how secure you think this social media is and how limited the audience to that is, that's not the case. And somebody with the necessary skills will be able to get through every barrier they need to get through, and they are trawling, and they are looking,
and they're very skilled at what they do. To get, I don't mean in a technical sense. I mean in a manipulative sense. They're very skilled at weeding their way into people's lives.
Well, we know that from ourselves, from the feedback and the messages that we're seeing of the people that we've got doing what we're doing. We can see. I mean, basically, some of them, quite frankly, you can look at it and if you've got half a mind to look at it in when you're not vulnerable, you can see that they're sociopaths.
Well, at least, yeah, at least. Okay, I mean, again, we talked. I mentioned the child being a victim and the mother being a victim, but at the same time, in many cases, and I suppose most of the cases, the mother has been a victim of sexual abuse herself, and that, like I said before, is now seen as a reason for taking children. So it's a kind of compounded problem. You're going in, having been a victim of abuse, to the court to plead for your child, to get your child back, and you're seen as a potential predator on your own child for no other reason than you've been a victim yourself. I mean, it's a vicious circle, and it's one that's well used by the social services as an excuse to say, well, you may be mentally ill, and your sexual abuse in the past may. You may enact that on your own child. It's just bizarre, that reasoning.
Well, yeah, it's completely bizarre, as are some of the other methodologies used. Again, I don't want to be too specific, but I'll try and skirt around this in a way that doesn't identify too much. I've got one particular case that I'm looking at the moment. A young child, under 5 years old, suffered an accidental scratch caused by the mother's nail while the child was in the bath. Next day at nursery school, this was spotted. Police were called. The child was taken to hospital. The doctors concluded that it was just a scratch, and perfectly, normal. These things happen. It was nothing more. Although the child did say, "I don't like it when mummy scratches me," which is a child's implication that it wasn't the first occasion. Although there was no evidence to prove it wasn't the first occasion. The mother was interviewed by police. how do I say this without risking identifying anything? Let's just say she's. I can't say what I want to say. Within the definition of an assault in the United Kingdom is an assault is either an intentional or reckless application of force to another. I've listened to the interview tapes, and they say to her, no, we know you didn't do it deliberately, so on and so forth. It was just a little bit reckless, wasn't it? Just say you did it, you were a little bit reckless. Was that right? And she said, well, yeah, I suppose it was a bit reckless. Yeah, I was a bit reckless. All I'll say is this lady really potentially should have had somebody else in interview with her. I won't go any further than that. Now, she was convicted on the strength of that, and they retained her child. Since being in care, the child has made numerous, multiple allegations against the carers, saying that they're hitting her, that they're scratching her, that they're doing this, that, and the other. And of course, no action has been taken, and this is the reason that she and an independent social worker have been to see me. And that's another example of what's happening now. I obviously, if the child was to be believed in the first instance, why aren't we believing the child in the second instance? In Somerset this week, I believe a 4-year-old Down syndrome child has died whilst under foster care. So there's going to be some serious questions asked about that. I'm not going to, we're not going to make any suppositions or jump to anything like that. However, I do know of another case, again, which I really can't talk about, where a child has been subject to a continued course of conduct over a 2.5-year period of being repeatedly assaulted by foster parents. And although, this includes some quite serious injuries, which were fobbed off as so we're talking burns here, got considerable burns as being self-inflicted, to the point of where the social services have now had to admit to the parents, well, actually, yes, we've had to remove your child from the foster care environment because they have been subject to abuse. And I'm quite certain that there's an awful lot of children going into these foster care situations, and they are being subject to, if there was any abuse in the first place, equal or greater levels of abuse. And I'm very concerned about the entire process of how foster parents are selected, the amount of checks that are done, and the motives. Let's not forget that you're paid between £400 and £500 a week to be a foster parent. So, I'm quite certain that the motives for wanting to do this are anything or generally anything other than purely altruistic.
Well, everybody's got their price, haven't they? Going back to my own life, I know personally of 3 children from the same family who were put into a foster home. Very, very elderly people. And these children aged from 5 years old up to 12, and they were all abused by the male in that household over many years. But there were alternatives in that case, whereby those children could be put with people far more suitable, but social services chose this particular household, and you've got to wonder why. That's gone back to the 70s, early 70s. So, this has been going on a long time. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And we've seen historical paedophilia cases, whether it's priests or whatever. Jimmy Savile. This goes back a long way. It's not just a new phenomenon. And I really don't see it stopping. It just seems to be going on with no serious inquiries into it on any serious rank of within the police services or indeed politicians. Stop.
I think anybody that thinks that the sort of paedophilic activities that were prevalent during the Savile era and probably still are stop at Z-list celebrities, then I think, quite frankly, you'd have to be delusional. You've only got to look at association. And I think if any effort was put into it, we would find that it goes a lot further up the ladder.
Yep, and that's possibly a good place to end the topic, unless you've got anything more to add, and we can go to a piece of music.
Yeah, not at all. No,
right. Okay, we'll go to a piece of music, and then we'll come back and we'll basically go through what we've got planned for the year ahead. Quite a few issues to look into, and we've already started. So we'll go to a piece of music. I think we're going to Nirvana and Son of a Gun, and then we'll come back and talk about the year ahead.
No lizards, no aliens, no nonsense. This is Reality Bytes in association with Sovereign Independent UK and One World Chronicle.
Welcome back to Reality Bytes Radio, and we're kind of finished with the dark stuff, and we're going to go on and talk about what we've got planned for the year ahead over the next half hour or so. One word of advice: if you're planning a holiday anytime soon, I would advise you not to take a cruise around Antarctica. Despite numerous reports of global warming for decades, apparently it's getting a little cold down there, and the penguins are even starting to wear fur coats. It's getting so bad, so I wouldn't bother. If you want a frozen fish supper, that's the place to go. Anyway, Dave, you wrote an article the other day there, and it's up on the site at communitypress.com, along with that advertisement for the cruise around Antarctica, if anybody is actually interested. Dave's article about diversity he mentioned earlier on. We've got an article about the Guardian actually promoting online pornography. And of course, a couple of other journalists are hardcore pornographers themselves, so that doesn't come as a surprise. And we have today, or perhaps yesterday it was, somebody in the European Union saying that basically your countries are finished, and if you don't like it, well, that's just tough. This was what it was all about, and that's what you're going to get. But what's on the CPG agenda for 2014 is the article that Dave put together yesterday or the day before. With Mr. Osborne, of course, telling us that we're going to suffer more dire austerity, and he's going to put us all into extreme poverty this year, while he sits back and has his 5 or 6 star dinners and stuffs his fat pockets and his mouth with our money, basically. And, well, yeah, so what we're going to do about it, Dave?
Well, I think, it's we're going to have to look at a multi-pronged campaign. We've still got to continue the work that we're doing. I think we've still very much got to focus on the knocking the S off this terrible word communities, and helping people to sort of accept and work within the fact that we're not communities. We are a community, regardless of the diversity that we have, and that we all face the same holistic picture, or certainly the same holistic problems. I'm going to proactively pursue the criminal justice side of things. I'm going to be doing an awful lot of training, teaching people how to write statements properly, the rules of evidence in the criminal procedure rules, which were amended in October of 2013, and showing to people, yeah, we can do this. We can get people into court. We can get people within the authorities into court. We can make these people answerable. And the thing is about that is to get as much training done as we can, to get as many people out there, as many people that are going to, pass on that training to people within their peer groups, and start to clog up the courts. People say to me, it's so difficult getting a private prosecution, you don't really hear of it, and so on and so forth. To put that in perspective, it's not a private prosecution, it's a criminal prosecution. Very often it will be taken over by the CPS. It certainly won't be Dave Eden versus PC Smith of Hertfordshire Constabulary. It will eventually become R versus PC Smith of Hertfordshire Constabulary. And what I would say to people is, if you do a little bit of research and you look, you will see that there are thousands of what are perceived to be private prosecutions every year. Every prosecution brought by the RSPCA, Royal Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, is that methodology. It is a private prosecution, if that's what you call it. Every prosecution taken by Department of Trade and Standards it's the fact people who prosecute people for stealing intellectual property from the film and music industry. These are all private prosecutions, if that's how we want to deem them. They are predominantly successful, and it shows that this methodology is very firmly fixed and recognised within the criminal procedures rules. So that's something that I'm personally going to pursue, and I'm going to help other people pursue that and make sure that we do plenty of training and promotion in and around that. I think the question now is bringing things to people's attention. It's not about sitting around waiting for people to find you and to notice you. So, we're going to repeat the disastrous filming events of today. We've got a lot of professional film equipment, a lot of good technical equipment. We're continuing with our documentary on geoengineering with Dr. David Lim. Hopefully that's going to be done by May and ready for distribution. And we just need to be out there, getting out on the streets. We've now got a mobile production unit, very well equipped, and get out there, engage with the public, and get people to identify with a common value and say, look, we can do this. This is how we can do it. We can achieve that tipping point. Let's not go down these rabbit holes that are complete nonsense. We touched briefly earlier on the common law debacle. I certainly don't want to go down that. There are rules, there are laws. This perception that they're their rules and their laws is very wrong. They're our laws, and we can use them. Parliament is 620 people. All we need is a majority in Parliament. People elected throughout the UK. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long, slow, atrocious path to walk. But you get 320, 330 like-minded individuals that are sharing a common value, then we can change things, and we can change things properly. Certainly without going down the paths of certain people, I believe, at the moment are going down the wrong path, and for reasons that I don't understand, seem to be proactively promoting sort of confrontation methodologies, and I think we're going to see that in and around the fracking issue. Certainly, sort of come the middle of the year, and we need to be on top of that. We need to be saying to people, this isn't the way. If we do this, it's going to allow them to introduce more draconian measures.
Yeah, well, of course, I don't think it's going to be just around the fracking issue, because Boris Johnson today is in the newspapers demanding that he gets water cannon for London for the summer. So he must be expecting something to happen. But there you go. And maybe we're just going to get a marvellously hot, global warmed summer, and it's just to cool down, innocent bystanders. Who knows?
Of course.
But Anon in the chat box is asking about the Wi-Fi campaign in the schools, and we've started making moves on that. And if Anon is interested in that, you should go to the Bio Initiative Report 2012. It's about 1,600 pages long, but there's a 9-page conclusion section, which will tell him all he needs to know about the dangers of Wi-Fi and cell phones and all the rest of it. But this has already been stopped in France, Russia, Australia, Canada, and some schools in Ireland, with the help of Walter Graham, who was on the programme a number of months ago, and we'll probably have him back on again when we're doing this campaign. He's going to give us a bit of advice on that. But we do have a school in the Bedfordshire area where a number of parents have already made a case for the termination of Wi-Fi, and they're being laughed at basically by the administrative staff there. So we're going to put together a case and put it to the heads of that school, and if they don't do anything about it, then I think there's a case to be had for taking a prosecution against them, Dave.
Potentially, I mean, that's something that I would need to be looked at. I've got people, as we spoke before, people that are within the legal system that are prepared to work pro bono. I think we can construct something there and ask them to look at see if there is a case there or not. But I think the important thing around that issue is so we're going to make a case to them, and yeah, we are, but we're going to make a very strong case. As I previously mentioned, we do have the production unit now. It's a large vehicle. It's basically a mobile studio. It's green screened. It's lights. It's powered, and we will be up there. And we will be up there in force. It's not going to be a case. It's not going to be a polite letter to the editor. We're going to be up there. We're going to be distributing Barry Trower's latest report, Wi-Fi for Thalidomide in the Making. We're going to be conducting interviews with parents. And we're going to be broadcasting them, and we're going to try every methodology that we can to draw as much attention to it as we can, because what we're looking for there is we only need to get it out of one school. If we can then get significant publication in and around that, we can, it's going to start a domino effect. And that's what we need, and we need to do it by being proactive. And I sometimes get a little bit fractious in and around what can only be described as this pseudo-intellectual masturbation of sitting in all these meetings. Hello?
Yeah, I actually thought you were going to say hungry, but
yeah, I get that as well. The time to stop talking has long gone. With the same sense in and around the community press officers or people that want to get involved. I mean, we're moving to a much, much bigger office where we can train. We can run the training courses, and if people want to come, they want to come on the training courses. Obviously there's an initial 2-day course, but there's going to be more specific structured courses in and around different disciplines. This is what I'm saying, if people want to do it, you need to make the effort. You need to get here, you need to do the training. Obviously you need to follow your own path, but you need to have some competency in what you're doing. And not just myself, there are a number of other people involved that can offer people those competencies, from, skills for writing for the internet, for social media, certainly myself around Criminal Justice Act, so on and so forth. And that's, that we're going to be very much focusing on that as well. And of course, the Wi-Fi campaign is going to be brought in together with the Tetra campaign. There are issues around that. We understand now the police forces are looking at pulling Tetra by 2016, which is a very sneaky move because it's 2 years prior to the end of the trial period. Therefore, the trial will not officially end. Therefore, they don't have to draw any conclusions, and therefore they don't have to, there's no form of acquiescence in and around the illnesses that have been associated with it, especially around the brain tumours and the esophageal cancers that the police officers and other emergency service workers have been suffering from.
Well, just on that subject, and just going off on a slight tangent, you came across an article yesterday or today showing the breast cancer caused by mobile phones, and I've seen many young women sticking a mobile phone down the top and tucking it into their bra, and I think you said that the actual mark on the breast was in the shape of the mobile phone. Is that correct?
Yeah, simple Google search. If you search cell phone breast cancer bra, strange combination of words that I should be looking for, but there you go. You will find images on there, and you will see images of breast cancer, and it is in the shape of cellular phones. And we know this is happening. The Wi-Fi in schools is an absolute priority. I've no reason to disbelieve the Barry Trower's report. I've spent time with the man at his home address. I've interviewed him. I've been privy to large amounts of documentation, and I think he's highly credible. I know you yourself have got young granddaughter. And the effects that this, specifically the female children, the potential effects that it's going to have on these children, these young girls, and the impact it's going to have on future generations that has to be a priority, that we get Wi-Fi out of the schools in the UK. And we've got to work endlessly to do it. And that's why we need people to come and actually physically assist in doing this, as opposed to sitting around and talking about it.
Yeah. Okay, we'll put that one to bed. Something else we're going to need a bit of assistance on is the setting up of a food bank. Now, this it's not seen that this is going to be a regular weekly thing, but we did want to make a point to the Department of Work and Pensions in regard to basically them starving people to death by cutting their benefits, or in many cases just withdrawing their benefits completely. I have a colleague of mine who is ME, and his benefits are no longer sufficient for him to survive. So, basically, myself and others have helped him out with some dry foods and all the rest of it, and got him stocked up. But that's not the point. But we did think about doing it outside a local Job Centre Plus office, but on hindsight, I don't think that's such a good idea. I don't think it'll get the publicity that it really needs. The preferred option, certainly, I think, maybe the logistics of it might not be too easy to deal with, but outside the head of the DWP headquarters, if you like, in London, nice big wide pavement there, and really we want hundreds of people to turn up with carrying a couple of tins or a couple of packets of dry foods, and basically just making the point that the Department of Work and Pensions are killing people, literally, whether it's through starvation or whether it's simply not giving them enough to heat their homes or whatever reason. I know there's a campaign out there at the moment run by somebody, I think, I can't remember the name, but they're trying to prove a case that the cuts in benefits are leading to people committing suicide. Now, I think that's going to be a hard one to sell, because that's getting into people's heads and deciding that that's the reason they did something. Which I think is, I mean, from a policeman's point of view, I mean, how can you prove that, Dave, that it was a specific thing that caused them to commit suicide?
Unless they've actually left any evidence to that effect, then it's like anything else. It's any action that anybody takes. It's just open to speculation and interpretation, isn't it? And let's face it, once you've got psychologists and psychiatrists looking at it, they work on nothing more than totally unproven theory of value. But that seems to be accepted, and you can well imagine that the people that are in the ploy of the authorities are going to come to the conclusions that the authorities want. So I should imagine that would be nigh impossible to prove.
Yeah, I think so myself. In regards to the food bank, I'll stick something together over the weekend and get it up there on Monday. What we basically need, obviously, is food, and lots of it. Or a guarantee that enough people are going to turn up with it on them on the day to still be decided. I don't think it's wise to try and do it in the middle of winter when people don't want to be actually on the streets at all. But I mean, it could be a small monetary donation or whatever. I mean, we do intend actually going to some of the large supermarkets and seeking permission to stand outside and collect small food items from shoppers for that purpose, but we'll see how that goes and keep folks up to date on that. But I think the point has to be made, and it would be great to film it and actually see if the authorities have the stupidity to actually put themselves out there to stop us actually giving food away to poor people. I think that'd be a great source of embarrassment. But then again, these people have no conscience or no embarrassment really in what they're doing, but hopefully enough of the general public in the centre of London would take note of what we're doing and perhaps get involved themselves and start actually speaking to their politicians and start asking questions as to why they're doing such and such. And there's an election coming up in 2015. There's the target. I mean, if they don't do anything, just tell them they're going to get a vote. If you're that way inclined, I personally won't be voting for anybody, but whatever. You can always make the threat, can't you? They don't know you're not going to vote. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah, on the subject of voting, Neil, 2016, May 2016.
I was coming to that. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to run for Police and Crime Commissioner for Hertfordshire. Anyone that knows me and knows my history has looked at any of the stuff that I've got out there, the Laughing Policeman stuff that was published in the I think it was Sunday Independent and other stuff. That they'll know what my opinions and attitudes are towards target-driven policing, manipulation of figures. Strangely enough, I've seen that it's in the press today that some senior Metropolitan Police officers have admitted that they've been manipulating the crime figures. I don't want to get personal about our current Police and Crime Commissioner, except that I will say that we did ask somebody to pose a question to him. Some of my ex-colleagues have said to me that they're very concerned about the amount of time that they're spending in Bedfordshire and Cambridgeshire. Sometimes up to like 2/3 of their working hours has been spent in adjoining counties. When that question was asked, why, and is it the Hertfordshire taxpayer that's paying for this? The simple and quite evasive answer to the question was, I don't answer questions on operational policing, which is absolute nonsense. It's not like he's answering a question about a sensitive covert operation. I'm going to run for the post in 2016. I will make it honest, open, transparent, critical if it needs to be, and I would like to think that over the next couple of years that campaign will gain in strength. And what I would say one of my first objectives would be I would get every senior officer of the force to submit to me a role profile. And I would look through all them to justify what they did, why they were there, why they needed to be in that department. I've always said the police is top-heavy, very, very top-heavy, with managers that seem to be running ridiculous departments like the Edward de Bono thinking hat liaison department or something other equally bloody ridiculous. And likewise with the amount of warranted officers that are inside police stations doing jobs that can be done by sort of less well paid, if we want to say that, but or less well rewarded civilian employees. Warranted officers should be out there. They should be on the streets. They should be frontline policing. I know from my own experiences that on a Monday morning I could log onto the system and find that there was 1,200 people on duty, and at 10 o'clock Monday night I could log on and find that was sort of less than 100 people on duty for the whole county. And so that's the sort of tack that I would be going along, and so that's what I'm going to be doing, and I would hope that people will come forward and support me in that. I'm going to invite David Lloyd at some point in the future to debate it with me. I am going to pose either personally, or I'm going to have other people posing some questions in the next couple of years. That he's going to have to be open and transparent about in his answers, because I will certainly know the answers to those questions before they're asked.
Go on. Well, one question I'd like to ask him is why every household in Hertfordshire is giving him £300 a year.
Well, they've got a budget of 60 million, and I'd like to know what that's been spent on, especially in and around things like AMPR.
But they've got a bigger budget than that. That 60.9 million only relates to what they get from council tax. Yeah. So I mean, that's your council tax is now paying for the police, which it never did before. How's that come about?
Well, I would dearly love to know what this has been spent on, because if the comments that are coming back to me from my ex-colleagues, and oddly enough, it's not only people that I knew well in the police service, people that I was not really acquainted with before have been introduced to me, and they're now coming and talking to me. You know what my opinions on that are. We won't go into that in too much detail. But there are serious issues that need to be addressed, and as we talked before, if we can get the right people in the right positions, we can make a difference. And if by example, If I can do something in Hertfordshire, it's going to put other police and crime commissioners under an awful lot of pressure to look at that model and say, well, actually, here's somebody that's come along that's open, honest, transparent, prepared to take the flak, not prepared to take any BS. Then maybe we're going to have to stop hiding behind the role as well.
Yeah, well, the actual total budget for this year is 198 million. Interestingly enough, they've got a section here for fees and charges of 5.2 million. So when you're getting all those parking tickets, they've actually budgeted for it already. They budgeted in advance for so many parking tickets, I suppose.
Well, of course, they've got another form of income as well, which is the stealth taxation through the NDORS, the National Driver Offender Rehabilitation Scheme. Again, Freedom of Information Act requests going on that, but not really getting very many satisfactory answers in and around that. Very non-committal. In fact, there's only Dorset Police that have answered, and they've admitted that they do get a kickback, but they won't say what it's spent on. So, but these things are all things that are going to be done. It's going to be a long, hard year ahead. The other thing I would say, before I forget, Neil, and I shouldn't forget because it's an extremely important thing, I think we all would welcome more ladies coming on board. I don't know why, but there are so few that want to get involved. I know they're out there, and I know, please, ladies, come on board, start working with us, for us, in tandem with us. We would we would love that we're maybe going to be able to do some form of recorded program 2, 3, 4 times a week as the year goes on. We've certainly got the equipment for it, and to get some female presenters for that, I think is very, very necessary.
Well, they've got to be far better looking than we are. Put it that way. As a completely sexist
better
remark,
looking than I am, mate.
It's a completely sexist remark, but we do know our pitfalls. But there you go. I'd like to thank the Hertfordshire PCC for sending me a nice brochure on the Police and Crime Commissioner with his photograph and everything in it. I don't know how much this brochure costs, but there you go. They send you that these days with your council tax bill. It's so kind. Just to justify you giving them £300 a year, I suppose. Anyway, so yeah, you mentioned the live broadcasting. So we'll maybe start 2-3 times a week and just see how it goes. And it'll probably be as shambolic as this radio program is, but there you go. We live and learn. And if it's anything,
it will be done with heart and commitment, and
exactly,
vibrant with sincerity.
Yeah, and we will try not to laugh on screen. But I'm sure we will, on occasion, slip up. Or, well, depends on your point of view, really. Everybody needs a laugh now and again. We're also working on the website, and there are a number of PDFs we'd like to put up, and also basically template forms that people can use. And that also forms part of the training. You're talking about people can actually see the statement, the MG11 form, the statement forms, the subject access request forms, the FOI requests.
Subject access requests, yeah. I mean, they're a thing that are greatly underused, misunderstood. Very, very powerful tool. The powers that be generally don't expect them. They're usually expecting a freedom of information request. And they've uncovered some very, very interesting information. People are very stupid. Certainly when they're writing to each other in what they think is the security of being able to exchange emails that won't go any further. And suddenly when they become the property of the subject, it can cause certain authorities an awful lot of embarrassment. And, it costs you £10 to do it. They've got a maximum of 40 days to reply. But we'll get those templates up there. People need to be using these.
Well, I told you my own experience of that. My son up in Scotland was complaining about dampness in his house for 8 years. And he went in and threatened them with legal action, and they told him he was going to submit a subject access request. And over the Christmas period, he had all his windows replaced, gutters renewed, and everything within a week. So, there's obviously something in it.
Well, it's something they didn't want him to see. And of course, that comes on a personal level. I mean, we're not talking necessarily that they're going to report back on on information that's available through freedom of information. That you're going to get back personal emails. Mr. Smith has spent Mr. Brown something in which he's described you as a person of obsequious duplicity. Maybe two-faced liar.
Dave, you're back again. You're breaking up badly there, but never mind. We're coming to the end of the broadcast anyway. Are you still there?
I'm still here, mate. Yeah, I don't know what's going wrong.
Your sound's awful. We'll just finish it up there, and we'll finish with a piece of music. And next week, I'm not sure who I've got next week. I did have an email from G. Edward Griffin today. That's looking like he'll be on the 23rd of January. This coming week, we're going to be up in Huntington filming Reverend Philip Foster, who is an advocate of the anti-global warming scam, and he knows all about the eugenics movement and all the rest of it. So that should be quite interesting. We're going to film that and have an interview with him afterwards. And we'll find a guest from somewhere for next week, and we'll talk to you then. And Paula can take it away.